Yeah, we'll mention that. We're going to start with mumps. Mumps is on page 492. I mean, there is a ascites on page 490, but you can read that when I skip over it, though.
What page is it?
492 is where mumps is. So, mumps is an infection by a virus, a specific virus, and it tends to infect the salivary glands, especially the parotid. That's where I believe it gets its name from, because it makes, I don't know why you call that mumps necessarily, but it makes you kind of under your chin swell out. I would bet nobody in here has had mumps, because we all get vaccinated for it.
Unless your parents are anti-vaxxers.
Oh, yes. So, MMR is measles, mumps, and rubella. That's a vaccine that I would guess most of you have had. And that vaccinates for you. It creates antibodies. And the thing about mumps is that if it does infect your salivary glands, which in most cases it does, it's not a big deal. It's uncomfortable until your body produces enough antibodies to kill it off. But it can infect other organs, specifically your pancreas. If it infects your pancreas, it can actually destroy the pancreas and end up causing problems in that area. It also can affect the testes in males and cause sterilization. That is, no, don't even think that. It's not something that you want to expose yourself to. It wouldn't work on you anyway, because I'm sure you've got the vaccine.
No, I was just saying sterilization as well when you're in your teenage years to early 20s, but it wouldn't work out with it.
Okay, so that's the main thing that we need to know about mumps. But it would be good to know that it is generally the parotid salivary gland, kind of behind your jaw, that tends to get infected there. Okay, next I believe page 497. We have gastritis and peptic ulcers. So, of course, itis on the end of the word, it just means inflammation. So gastritis would be an inflammation of the stomach. And it can be caused by any number of things. Alcohol can give you gastritis, but also aspirin. If you take too much aspirin, it's not buffered aspirin especially. Most aspirin you buy nowadays is buffered, but the original type of aspirin that was not buffered can wear down parts of the mucus lining and cause inflammation in the stomach. So you're not, and I forget what the recommendations are on it, but you're not supposed to take aspirin day in and day out over a long period. Yeah, I mean, aspirin has its uses. I'm just saying, just like anything, you take it too much, it might kind of cause other problems. Okay, ulcers are when the mucus lining in the stomach or in the initial parts of the duodenum get wore away, so that the acid and the enzymes start to cause irritation to the actual tissue of the stomach or the intestines. Okay. These peptic ulcers can be caused by just a lack of production of the mucus that protects the stomach. But in most cases, you also have an actual infection of a bacteria. So a lot of times you hear that stress can give you an ulcer. And it has been shown that stress can decrease the mucus production, but in almost all cases, you're still going to have an infection of a bacteria to actually get an ulcer. Oh, so because it's usually a bacterial infection, a lot of times, or most of the time anyway, treatments for ulcers is actually to give antibiotics. Oh, I missed one. I thought that was weird. We'll have to go back. Sorry. I got ahead of myself. We'll have to go back to page 495. Let's talk about esophagitis, and diaphragmatic hernias. Okay, as we talked about before, your esophagus doesn't really have, I mean, it's not sensitive to pain and things like that, but it doesn't really have any protection from the acid in your stomach. And most of the time that's not a problem because the lower esophageal sphincter, that muscle down where the esophagus runs into the stomach, closes things off. But if that relaxes too much, stomach acid can come up into your esophagus. And that will cause inflammation, and acid reflux. Most people feel it as heartburn. And generally what people do is they'll take some antacids, some chemicals that will buffer the acid and decrease the pH, make it not irritate that esophageal lining as bad. Of course, the problem with that is your stomach is kind of set up to work with acid. So if you're continuously buffering out your stomach acid, you might not be digesting the food that you eat that you should. Okay, now I'm not exactly sure why they put these two things together because they're completely different. But a diaphragmatic hernia is when your guts, your stomach, or your intestines, or whatever, some part of you actually works its way up along the esophagus through that break in the esophagus. Or sorry, not in the esophagus, in the diaphragm. Remember, the esophagus runs down, and it has to run through the diaphragm, so we have the esophageal hiatus, that hole in the diaphragm that the esophagus runs through. And so that kind of, things can sometimes work their way up along, parts of your intestines, your stomach can work their way up along the esophagus, stick out. A hernia overall is basically just an organ of some kind pushing its way, or some sort of tissue pushing its way out of the cavity that it's supposed to be in and breaking into another cavity. Okay, because you don't really have any pain receptors there, some of you could have a diaphragmatic hernia right now and not even know it. But if too much stuff works up in there, it can actually restrict your esophagus, it can put pressure on certain organs, and get worse. Okay, next, page 498. Stomach cancers. Okay, stomach cancer or gastric cancer is a pretty common cancer. And it tends to go untreated for quite a while because the basic symptoms of it are the same as an ulcer. So you might just take, you might have a stomach cancer, but because it feels like an ulcer, you might be taking antibiotics or something if the doctor prescribed them instead of taking an x-ray to actually look for stomach cancer. Okay, the main reason I want to talk about this, what's kind of cool, is that your stomach is actually kind of not an organ you absolutely have to have. The only function that it serves that you cannot live without is the production of that hormone CCK, and that they can give you, you can take orally hormones to replicate that. So you can have a complete gastrectomy and have your stomach completely cut out, and through certain changes to your lifestyle, obviously, you can still absorb the nutrients, because most of that happens in the intestines, the small intestines, and the production of acid and all that kind of stuff isn't really needed. But you have to change your lifestyle a little bit on how you ingest your food. Yes?
So, like, what would happen like, if we would eat?
So it would just go straight into your intestines from there. So it would have to be, those people have to tend to break up their food a little bit more, maybe have a lot of smoothies and that kind of stuff. And they do have to tend to take enzymes so that things will break themselves down a little bit more quickly in the small intestine. Okay, so that's stomach cancer. Next, vomiting, horking, blowing chunks, calling Ralph on the big phone.
What was that last one?
Calling Ralph on the big phone? No. Because you, like the toilet, it's kind of like the phone receiver, and you go, Ralph! Get it?
I get it.
So, obviously the vomiting reflex is your body trying to get things out that it doesn't want in. So the main function of vomiting has to do with ingestion of toxins. So like back in our evolutionary history, you eat some berries that are not good for you. Your stomach says, hey, these are not right, we're going to get those out of there. Now, certain types of infections can cause stimulations that are going to cause the same thing. So, like when you have the flu, a lot of times there's irritation there that's going to mimic the signals that would be sent to your medulla oblongata that tell you that you need to get rid of the food that's in your stomach or your intestines. And so you end up throwing up even though you haven't taken in any toxins. So that's just kind of a false alarm sort of situation.
Eat too fast.
Yeah, I think eating too fast can definitely do it. Filling your stomach too much can cause irritation that will lead to vomiting. Okay. What you may not know is that everybody has puked before, right? So anybody that's never thrown up. Okay. You.
Whatever.
So, if you feel kind of those contractions happening, it feels like your stomach's being tied in knots. What's happening there is there's strong peristalsis contractions in your intestines that are forcing stuff in the first part of your intestines back into the stomach. So when you throw up, it's not just your stomach contents coming out. It is the first little bit of your intestine contents as well. So that's fun. But I mean, it's all a continuum, right?
It's all connected.
Yeah. So you also have probably noticed that when you feel like you're going to throw up, you feel like you have to start spitting. Okay? Your salivary glands will actually ramp up production of saliva because the saliva will actually help buffer the acids in the stomach so that it doesn't erode your teeth as much. So the spitting is actually your mouth trying to protect the teeth when that stuff's going to come up.
Sick.
So really shouldn't spit out start to happen.
Right. One telltale sign of bulimics, everybody knows what bulimia is, right, is abnormal teeth wear and teeth break down because acid breaking down the teeth so often. Okay? Now, when you actually hork, your diaphragm tenses, and so the stomach muscles kind of push against the diaphragm and squeeze the stuff out. Not through the esophagus.
So
hopefully into a toilet.
So what is your
and not into a sink, because that sucks cleaning up. Yes?
so was your ancestors
Your son was
before they came over?
Your son was sick the other day. Did that happen?
No, he did not puke in the sink. I'm thinking of
Remember the trash can last year?
Oh, that was it. Okay, during circuits, we were doing circuits, and
So let's back the train up. First, we went to Pizza Ranch, like before we went to track practice, because it was the last knowledge phone. And we were sitting there doing circuits, And all of a sudden, Roger gets up,
Mine
walks
right in
over
front
to
of
the
the
garbage
garbage
can.
can.
Fills it, leaves it
Me
there.
and Callie are right in front of the garbage can. He just comes over and pukes.
At least it was like a solid 4 minutes of him just
And
standing.
it smelled so bad.
And then at the end, Mr. Bauer was like, all right, clean it up. He just pulls the bag out of the trash can, throws it over his shoulder, and walks.
Did you at least after you were done throwing up, look at him and go, yeah, that's right.
Yeah, bring it. Bring it. So,
Oh, you know that little hanging down thing, your uvula in the back of your throat?
yeah.
That actually has a good purpose because when you throw up, the uvula and the soft palate back there rotate up to keep vomit from going up through your nasal
Oh,
pharynx.
sick. You're
So
sick.
I've had mine come out.
Oh, it's sick. Sick. Oh,
Mine
don't
clearly
smell
does not
that.
get
I
plastic.
don't want to smell that.
And it's got to have a pound of stuff up there.
And you're like, what is wrong with me?
Sorry.
Because it tastes like puke.
Okay.
Okay, moving on. On page 503, we need to talk about pancreatitis.
Yes, we do.
So, let me see what you guys think. Pancreatitis would be inflammation of the...
Pancreas.
Wow. So, that inflammation can be caused by any number of things. The ducts that run out of the pancreas could be blocked. You could have bacterial or virus infection. And pretty much any type of itis could be caused by bacterial virus infection.
Cut it out. Make a shot of whiskey, cut it out.
Or drug reactions, especially those involving alcohol. So alcohol poisoning can actually lead to pancreatitis. I don't think. So,
Maybe.
what's interesting is that in pancreatitis, I mean, a lot of times you get pancreatitis, it goes away, not a big deal. But in pancreatitis, what can happen is that the cells can actually start eating themselves, basically. I guess not eating themselves, but they can start eating each other. So lysosomes in the cells can actually start breaking other cells down, and you get autodigestion, self-eating. And that can actually lead to full failure of your pancreas. If you lose your pancreas, then you get diabetes. So, drinking large quantities of alcohol actually can lead to diabetes down the road. Just one other reason to drink in moderation when you turn 21. Yes, Riley?
There's a study I heard over the radio and then read about it later. And apparently they figured out if you put like good pancreas cells in the pancreas,
You can regenerate.
yeah.
Interesting.
And like,
Let's try
in
it.
like some of the cases, it was like meant to kind of like reduce insulin need, and then in some cases they took hold, you know.
Wow, that's cool. I did not know that.
Let's try it.
I don't have diabetes.
Does anybody have a pancreas that doesn't work?
Mine's functioning for now.
Okay. Yeah, for now. Liver disease, page 506. Okay, the liver is an organ that is very affected by alcohol, because of course the whole point of the liver is to take the toxins out before the blood that absorbs all the nutrients from the stomach goes on to the rest of the body. So because of that, it's going to be very affected by certain toxins that come through build up. But a cool thing about the liver is that it is able to regenerate itself a little bit. So you can lose a portion of your liver and it can regrow. It's not, that is not true of most of your organs. Okay, liver disease can be caused by cirrhosis, which you generally hear in conjunction with lots of alcohol use. Cirrhosis is when the liver gets full of lots of fibrous scar tissue. But of course, you can have viral infections, which can lead to hepatitis. So there we don't call it liverititis. Hepato is the liver, so hepatitis would be liver. And this is one I do know, and it says in the book that they have had moderate success with a actual not partial transfer, a liver that is not an actual liver, but is made from components. Artificial. Haha, that's the word.
Artificial.
So they have had some luck with actually putting in artificial livers for people to help filter out toxins.
So really,
I said they've had some success. That also should mean that they've had lots of not success.
but by the time mine gets to that point,
I wouldn't necessarily just bet on that. Okay, next page 509, colon cancer.
basically dead.
No.
Or something.
Yeah, that's more pancreas. Colon cancer is probably the most non-treated type of cancer. Well, I should say most non-treated as far as how easily it is to treat if you catch it early. Most people don't catch it right away. Huh?
I don't know if there's a sound on here.
Colon cancer?
Yeah.
Oh, did I not put colon cancer on there? Sorry.
Colon cancer.
Let's talk about colon cancer. This is one everybody should know. Sorry, I guess I missed that on the sheet. Okay. Now, screening, of course, it's not the most pleasant thing because they basically take a tiny camera and they have to put it up through the anus and the rectum to look at your colon. But because of people's fear of that, they just don't ever get screened, and then they have a very treatable type of cancer that ends up killing them because it's too far along. Yes, colonoscopy is the thing that I was talking about, where they put a camera up there to look. Okay.
Hey, you're over 40.
Definitely, definitely, if you ever see any blood in your stool, then that would be a cause for concern, and it can be a symptom of colon cancer.
What if it's just from taking too much Steve benefit?
It could be that, but it's better safe than sorry. I mean,
It's, it took like 14 ibuprofen for football.
yeah, that could damage his liver too. You could have liver damage.
Might have to say once, it's not that large number. I feel like it's like 4 or 5.
Now, as Riley pointed out, as far as colon cancer goes, they tend to say, once you turn 40 is a good time to come in. But really, screening is always good too. There was a health teacher back in my old school that showed videos of her colonoscopy to her students.
God, that's nasty.
Sick.
I mean, I understand showing the video. I don't think I'd probably find one on YouTube instead.
Why would you have a video
I
of
wouldn't.
that?
Why would you want to keep that? I mean, I wouldn't claim it as mine, anyways.
Here's my video of my colonoscopy. Here, look. Why is she showing?
Health.
Oh.
Health.
Yeah, that is true. That would be weirder.
What did you say?
I thought he said that
Our
he was a
kids, I
history
stop.
teacher, so that wouldn't have made any sense.
But there's few students things that showed up that day.
Okay, page 510. Hopefully this one's on the sheet. Diverticulitis.
Yep. Yes.
So, diverticulitis. You can actually have a little pocket of stuff that kind of gets trapped off to the side in the linings of your large intestine. The colon.
Abolish it.
Thank you, Riley. That's very eloquent.
That was
And in that pocket, you can have inflammation and infection, and it can be a recurring problem until it is generally solved with surgery, I believe. They have to cut the crap out. Okay. Diarrhea.
Pepto-Bismol.
Diarrhea. What? Rhea does mean to flow, yes. So diarrhea occurs when you have too little, not enough reabsorption of water in the large intestine. You know, most of the reabsorption happens there. Now, that can happen because for various reasons, your large intestine is not absorbing as much as it usually does, or it can happen just because there is too much liquid in your diet overall. Your body can't keep, your large intestine can't keep up with it. Okay, things that can limit your reabsorption of water are viral and bacterial infections and protozoan infections, let's just say. But there are certain enzymes and chemicals in foods that can cause that as well. So certain people have reactions to certain types of ethnic foods like Mexican food, Indian food. The chemicals in there, the certain things in that food can actually cause to lower the reabsorption of water in the colon. And so the feces are, or a ghost pepper. And so the feces are much more watery than they normally are. Oh, right, that's right. It just burned on the way out.
It was like hot lava. I'm sorry.
Oh, boy. Now, cholera is a disease much more common for modern medicine, but we can still have bouts of cholera that snap up, and it's an infection that can cause extreme water loss because there's very little reabsorption in the digestive system. So people can actually die from dehydration in just a couple of days because they're losing so much water, they're not reabsorbing it. Even though they're drinking as much as they can, the water just doesn't stay in the system. Cholera? For my class? Yeah. Yeah. Okay, the opposite effect, of course, is constipation. That's where you have too much water reabsorption. And that can happen for a couple of reasons. Mostly because the material is moving too slowly through the large intestine. You're absorbing too much water because it takes too long to get through. I mean, the absorption rate is kind of the same, but if it's moving slower, yeah, more of the water is going to get reabsorbed. And you get hard, compacted stool. And without trying to get too graphic here, your sphincter muscles on the end are kind of set up to be able to stretch, but they're also used to the feces being able to mold a little bit as it comes out as well. And so if it's too compacted and too hard, it can be very painful to pass through. So, the biggest things that cause constipation are not enough fluids in your diet and not enough fiber. Fiber helps to move the things along, but it also helps helps to kind of trap water and make it so that the feces doesn't get as dried out. There are laxatives, and what laxatives do is they get water to move into the interior part of the colon and get absorbed by the feces. So make it much softer and funnier. Oh, one other thing that can cause constipation is lack of exercise and movement, because the movement of your body, the movement of your body and the muscles actually help to push things through the colon to the end. So you are more likely to be constipated if you just stick around. Okay, and this one might be another add-on. Might not be on the list, but we're going to talk about lactose intolerance.
Oh, that's there.
Okay. Now, it's kind of weird, considering that we're all mammals, and we start out with a diet that consists only of milk. But as we grow and develop, at least in our evolutionary history, we lost the ability to break down the sugars that are in milk, specifically lactose. It is actually just a kind of newer development in our evolution to get an enzyme that adults can drink milk. So if you go back a few thousand years in our evolutionary history, our ancestors were not, as adults, were not able to process milk at all. Is that right back there? So, we can actually see the development of this enzyme in our evolutionary history based on the certain types of people, where they're from, who are able to break down this lactose and have the enzyme that's able to break down the sugars in the milk. People from Europe tend to have the enzyme. People from Africa and Asia tend to not, because it's a genetic thing. It kind of developed first in Eastern Europe. It just hasn't spread throughout the world yet. I would say, if you look a few thousand years into our future of evolution, you will see that most people are tolerant of lactose. Lactose intolerance could be a thing. So, because they're not able to break down the enzymes, people that are lactose intolerant or they don't have the enzymes to break down the sugars, I should say. People that are lactose intolerant, when they eat things like cheese and milk and stuff like that, they tend to have certain types of bowel problems, very odoriferous flatulence and that kind of stuff. And that's a good place to stop.